Leg 3 of the Derby City 6 is the ninth race at Churchill Downs on Saturday. It's the American Derby. It's ungraded at 250,000, run at a mile and a 16th on the turf for 3-year-olds. And we'll take a look at the field, and there's some familiar faces we've seen from the Derby Trail, most notably Laganos and Agate Road, as well as First World War and Moonlight. All have recently been shifted to the turf from the dirt because the results were, frankly, a little disappointing for all of them. And it's kind of carried over to turf, in my opinion, to a degree. So this is a race, in my opinion, that screams for value. We've got some new shooters, Greenlight, coming off a most impressive 10-length maiden victory. Freedom Principle, who just ran in the Penn Mile. Depiction and Brilliant Birdie, who are both Cherie DeVoe trainees, and they're kind of new shooters to the stakes fray. So it's an interesting field, to say the least. Let's take a look at it. We'll go through them one at a time. Excuse me. Gotta wet the whistle. So, number one, Greenlight, is coming off a really impressive maiden score, won by 10 lengths at the down and distance, same distance on turf. Couple issues. Number one, Lasix has not run without it. Does have the progression of a horse who is improving, but the class level of the races that Greenlight has been running at, in other words, the race rating, hasn't changed. So this horse is getting better, but is running against basically the same class. And I don't like horses like this going into the stakes fray, especially when they had it their own way in that easy. And if you go back and watch that race, he had no challenge whatsoever throughout that entire race, won with complete ease. So I just don't like taking horses moving up in class like that. So I'll pass on Greenlight. Will be a pace factor, probably try to slow it down. And that, of course, is going to affect some other more prominent horses here who we'll get to. Number two, Moonlight, I think has had every chance to be a good horse and just hasn't done it. This meet at Churchill Downs, as well as the fall meet at Churchill Downs, are traditionally times when Todd Pletcher will take his JV performers, ones that need work, ones that need development, and because all his A players, his varsity, are pointed for Saratoga. So they're not going to be running here, and I think Moonlight's a great example of that. This is a horse who clearly needs work. The last race got a second in an N1X allowance. Ran an okay second, I guess, but it was clearly a case of this horse sort of getting it into gear entirely too late. Kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, the coast is clear. I can't win. Oh, good. Now I'll run fast. And you just don't like to see that. And I don't like this horse at all for this race. And certainly you're going to get the Pletcher tax, which nobody wants. And I think this horse is an underlay, and I really don't want any part of. Can Moonlight get into underneath in the try of the Super? Sure. But I just don't like this horse's chances at all in this race. Freedom Principle just ran in the Penn Mile. And the thing that's disturbing is the race prior, Freedom Principle won in ungraded stakes. And the pace fractions were the same. They were both quick in the ungraded stakes as well as the Penn Mile. The ungraded stakes, he won. The Penn Mile, he had no rally whatsoever. It tells me that he did run a career-high speed figure in the ungraded stakes, and I think there was a regression that happened afterwards. They like to put this horse on the rail and save ground, and I think that is... that's a little bit of an issue. It tells me that maybe the goal isn't to win, it's necessarily to place or get into the money. I don't know. But Freedom Principle, I think will run better this time. But will it be enough to win? It's kind of hard to gauge, especially since they've been running this one from off the pace, which I don't think will be a good place to be in this race. Freedom Principle can factor in the race, maybe get underneath in the exacta. Did have a pretty determined effort a couple back where they thought he was dead and kept running and actually got second. But he has less, it's not much to say, but this horse has less hair than some of the others. So Freedom Principle, I think he can use underneath confidently. Now we're going to look at our closers. Probably the most prominent horses in this race, Laganos and Agate Road. Laganos to me is one that seems very content with second and third. The last race I watched, I really did not like. It was again another instance where, oh, the coast is clear. Oh, now I can start running. And got up for second, but they had no chance to win. At the top of the stretch, this horse looked like he had a chance and just couldn't get it into gear. And the jockey was imploring him to get going, and he finally did, but again, too little, too late. Not going to have a lot of pace to run to here. I am more confident than I am with Agate Road that Laganos could perhaps factor in this race, but that's not saying a whole lot. I think there's a lot of things against Laganos here, and again, underneath for the try of the Super, maybe the Exacta, that's the extent of it. Agate Road, I've never liked this horse. Be right up front about it. I thought this horse was entirely overrated at 2. At 3, he really hasn't shown me a lot. This horse is obviously pace dependent. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, he had pace and couldn't get more than 5th. Okay, but he hasn't built on it. And he just hasn't demonstrated to me that he's this world beater that a lot of people seem to think he is. He has not demonstrated it on the turf, and until he does, I'm against him, and this is not the scenario for him right here. Pletcher is not having a good meet for the reasons I stated, and Agate Road may be another one of those project horses. He's just trying to get into a spot where he can maybe work some kinks out. In any event, I just don't like him here. Underneath for the try of the Super, sure, but that would be the extent of it. Depiction is very interesting. Being trained by Cherie DeVos is having a really nice meet. This horse ran probably a race, his last one, that if he ran back to it, would win this. It was a very nice effort. It stalked from mid-pack, had plenty of kick late, and showed some grit. It was a race that you really like to see first off the layoff for a 3-year-old. However, couple problems with it. Number one, it was on Lasix. Not going to get that here. And number 2, it was a significant improvement over his previous career high. Now, if it was a steady, like a gradual one, maybe 5 points or so, then I would be more inclined to believe that Depiction could move forward from it. But it was a really big step forward, and it was done with Lasix. I think this horse is primed for regression. Now, even if he regresses a little bit, could he still factor in this race? Sure, because there's issues for a lot of these other horses. So I'm not willing to completely exclude Depiction, but I think he's probably going to be a short price if everybody looks at that last race and the fact that Cherie DeVos the trainer. But I think he's more, he'd probably be a bit of an underlay, and I like him more for maybe getting up for second in the exotics at best. And because he'll be closer to the pace, and again, because there's issues with some of the other ones. Which leads us to First World War. I think First World War makes a lot of sense here. He's got the right running style. He's going to be just off the pace. The later runners have issues. First World War does not. He ran a nice Penn Mile. He's a graded stakes winner. There's a lot of horses in here who can't say that. He did so in nice fashion. He got a nice figure off it, and it's very logical, second off the layoff, that he'll progress. My one issue with him is I don't know how much this horse is getting better. I think he's kind of the same horse he was in January or February, and that's a bit of a concern. So the lack of definite upside is a little bit of an issue to me, but he's got a lot less wrong with him than a lot of the other horses here, and he's in good form. So to me, First World War is a very logical win candidate. However, number 8, Brilliant Birdie, is my pick to win this race, and here's why. First of all, I want a price in this race. I just do. There's too many horses with hair on them and issues, so I think this race screams for a value horse. Brilliant Birdie did a couple of things I really like. Number 1, came off the maiden race and won against an option 100 field that was pretty good. And did so, I really liked what I saw from this horse. Rated about mid-pack, had some traffic, professionally moved right through, got a good ride from Axel Concepcion, and then drew off with authority. This is a horse who's on the move upwards. One problem, not going to have Lasix here, has never run without it. That's really the only sticking point I have. You get Brian Hernandez in the irons. He's run this horse a couple of times before, and he's one of the best Churchill Downs riders there is. So if I'm looking for a price, I want a horse who's got some upside, and I think Brilliant Birdie, if he can run back uh, off of Lasix, then he's got a really good chance to win this race with a step forward. He has to make that step forward, but I think he can. And he looks to me like a horse who's primed and ready to do it, and he's got the right running style. So I want value in this race, so I'm going to go with Brilliant Birdie. So we took a look at our wagering strategy. We're going to take a win bet with Brilliant Birdie. And then First World War, I consider to be the second choice and more of a co-favorite. I can see going either way with either of them. I'm going to do an 8-7 cold exacta, Brilliant Birdie, First World War. You want to reverse that or box it, I can completely understand it. But I want to get paid, and I'm going for it. I want my backup exacta is 8 on top with 4, 6, and 7. And then the trifecta, we're going to go 8 on top with 4, 6, and 7, with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the only one I'm excluding is Greenlight because, again, for the reasons stated, I just don't think Greenlight's going to be there or will be factoring late in this race. So, in sum, I think this is a perfect opportunity to find a price. And for our Derby City 6 purposes, given the fact the first 2 legs are likely going to be kind of short, might be a little chalky, we've got to find some value somewhere. And I think this is a really good spot with a field that's filled with vulnerability. So we're going with Brilliant Birdie with a price.